thank you guys for joining me here on the High Ground podcast. I decided that's going to be the name, the High Ground with
Well,
Darth Chocolate. Um, and so today we're going to be talking all about the original trilogy, right? Everything that started this wonderful universe. So I wanted to start with let's actually start with Austin. We're gonna do a little intro, right? So who are you? Um, how did you get into the Star Wars universe, and what does it mean to you?
who are any of us, really? uh,
I don't know.
I don't know. Alas, poor trooper. I knew you will. No, so I'm Austin, one of Brandon's good friends, arguably, and got into Star Wars really when my dad took me to go see Empire Strikes Back, the special edition release in theaters in the '90s. So I remember just crossing the street to go to the theater, and that was like the most exciting thing possible for me. That was just super fun. I was like, oh my gosh, and I had already seen it at that point before, but my dad was like, no, you get to see it like how I saw it in the theaters. And I was like, oh, it's super cool. Let's do it. And so we ended up seeing all of them, but I remember Empire the most. So I think for sure the original trilogy and how cool just Empire was in general
Yeah.
really got me into the universe.
Nice. All
Mm-hmm.
right. And for anyone that doesn't know, on this YouTube channel, the very first thing that's uploaded is a little like audio comic book. This is a gentleman that is reading all of it, so that's his voice that you hear. And then we got Travis here. Same questions. Who are you? How'd you get into Star Wars, and what does it mean to you?
Okay. Well, my name's Travis, and I have been a Star Wars fan for as long as I can remember. Well, that's not true. Actually, I was just talking to my cousin about this today. My earliest memories of watching Star Wars, I was like 8 years old. But presumably I had seen it earlier than that. I just don't remember. But yeah, Star Wars has always been pretty much like an inspiration to me, and my lifeblood, So most T-shirts that I've owned are Star Wars related, and it's inspired me in a lot of different ways, like musically, and creatively. I've started to write fan fiction, and it's just the production, movie production, all of that stuff. It's an art, and I'm an artist, so I owe a lot of my inspiration to Star Wars itself.
Yeah, and then for those of you who don't know, Travis actually came with me in 2015 to Star Wars Celebration before The Force Awakens, and then after we had already seen it several times, he and I made the trek to San Francisco to see it on one of the best IMAX screens in the country. So yeah.
I did the research. It's, at least at the time, it was the best. Just the best. 70 millimeter, everything top notch. The only thing was their glasses were a little smudgy, but other than that,
I had to swap mine out. We also snuck in craft beer. It just makes the experience a lot better. But
also to Cal in a china shop, because he breaks all those pots with one hit. All right. I never really answered the question like Travis did of what Star Wars means to me. If that's okay, I'm going to go back and revisit that.
Go for it.
I think along the lines of what Travis was saying, that just in many different ways, Star Wars is a lot of different art forms in one, especially when you think of musically, like with John Williams and everything. I think there's a lot that I get from it personally. I wouldn't say religiously, but spiritually, for sure, about how we connect to one another, the universe, what it means to be a good person. Like, it's not, the end all be all, but like there are so many good lessons to be learned in that. And that is fun to use fun things in a way that you can also be good to people with. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of that in there, but that's just to sort of piggyback on
Yeah.
Travis's comment. I was like, yeah, I think that's the thing that I get most from is I love the deep connection to the world, what the Force means, like especially when it comes to the Knights of the Old Republic series, it goes far more into the galactic conflict, the nature of the Force, why it's important, why what makes someone more powerful than another,
Yeah.
versus a charismatic leader, etc. So I don't know. There's a lot of really deep stuff to dive into with it, and that's something that I really love about it.
And I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually looking forward to, because the Old Republic is going to be a whole episode, another episode of this. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be good. And then just for myself, I got into it from watching Empire Strikes Back on a VHS tape until it exploded. Till it was just no longer functional, didn't explode, but
I'm
same concept.
picturing like an MI6 or
Mission Impossible, yeah.
Yeah. Just boom, one day your VCR blows up.
But yeah, from there, it was seeing all the special editions come to theaters, and then into the prequels and all that stuff. So we're all around the same age group. Travis being the elder statesman. But,
yes, of course.
But yeah, why don't we jump into it? So before we actually get started talking about each episode, I gotta ask favorite characters and favorite character moments, if there's anything specific that jumps out at you.
Original trilogy only.
Original trilogy only. We'll have Travis. You go first.
Oh, hot spot. Okay.
No, he's in Teen Titans.
Hot seat. Yeah. Okay. So my favorite characters, I'm gonna have to say automatically Yoda and Han Solo. Obviously those are kind of easy ones, but really like Yoda and his just his nature is just so hilarious and also like super deep.
Yeah.
And I just like every single word he says is like poignant and meaningful. And so I love that, especially the on top of that, the John Williams score, of Yoda's theme. That's always been my favorite.
Okay. It's okay if John Williams is your favorite character. I'll accept it.
We've already mentioned him more than Darth Vader at this point.
Yeah, good point. And really, he is the MVP of Star Wars, I think.
Yeah.
John Williams.
But piggyback off of your Yoda comment, I still laugh hysterically when Yoda shows up, and just his whole comedy bit of like, it gets me every single time. Every time.
Yeah. And I was just watching Empire Strikes Back last night, and what I really focused on, or kind of like saw again for the first time, is how Yoda is the whole time he's putting on an act, and it's not that he's like so senile, but he's actually testing Luke in that moment where he's being a little bit ridiculous, and he's testing his patience. Yeah. And I always knew that, but seeing it again and seeing how he really was taking this all very seriously. And then just the characterization from Frank Oz bringing such gravitas to such essentially as a Muppet, like it's just really amazing. And then there's Han Solo, and he's actually a really deep character. in himself.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt really quickly? Frank
Yeah.
Oz also, in my opinion, just plays two roles in that same scene, because he plays a goofy, crazy old man in a swamp, and then he's also playing, like you said, patient Jedi who's trained, master of, 900, 800 years. So that's just to add to.
Yeah, exactly. He's a master. I mean, and he could literally turn around and do Miss Piggy, and not change his voice at all. It just changes sentence structure.
That's how I feel about Fozzie and General Grievous. I think their voices are actually super similar.
Who?
Yeah.
I didn't hear the first one.
Fozzie Bear.
Fozzie. Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, well, that's Yoda. But anyway. But I didn't mean to derail you from Han Solo.
Waka waka waka!
Waka waka!
Yeah. So yeah, the Han Solo, he's a complex person, and he has a lot of, like, you just immediately from the moment you see him in Star Wars: A New Hope, he's a jaded individual, and he's got a bounty on his head, and he's in deep trouble already by just the very beginning of the movie.
Deep poodoo.
And deep doo-doo this time. And
Death Mark's not an easy thing to live with.
No, it isn't. And but then you have the dichotomy, or I would say the chemistry with him and Princess Leia, and how she views him as a scoundrel and he views her as a stuck-up snob, but they're actually both misunderstanding each other. And it's not, and those are what I think a lot of people take away as, like, that's who Han Solo started as, was a scoundrel, and Princess Leia started out as a snob. But they never were those things. It was just, that was the prejudice that they both had towards each other. And then in Empire Strikes Back, you see those walls breaking down, and they actually see who they really are, and then that you have the love story that blossoms from that. I just think it's brilliant writing, and George Lucas, I don't care what anybody says about him, he can write. He can. I know he didn't direct Empire Strikes Back, but he produced it, and he infused it with his intentions and his vision. And there are things that to this day are copied and continue to inspire filmmaking and storytelling that really were unprecedented at that time. So I'll stop ranting.
It was a good rant, but yeah, I know. Austin?
I guess Kreia. Oh, sorry. I mean Leia. Got him. No, I would say favorite original trilogy characters.
Boba Fett.
Boba Fett. I hope you're just ready for a lot of that. Oh boy. I mean, of course, really like Vader. Enjoy is the wrong word. Like the Emperor, but especially Luke in Return of the Jedi. He's just super calm, real relaxed, knows what he's about. He's not flipping out anymore. Of like hitting his head into huts and stuff. Not Jabba, like Yoda's. So I really do like the progression of his character there. And Vader's character actually develops a lot in 5, because you see that he's not big man on campus, even though it's referenced in 4. We're like, who's the Emperor at all? Because, Tarkin is, of course, talking about, like, oh, well, the Emperor is dissolved the Senate permanently, and, we're not, regional governors are going to be a thing, blah, blah, blah. But they just get right into the story from there, and he's glossed over. So I don't know. I think I don't know if I have favorite characters who I'm like, awesome, they're on screen now, like my favorite things are happening. I think I like more of the events from the original trilogy more than just the characters. But
that's fair.
That's how I feel, is because Star Wars is so event based. not, I wouldn't say more or less than character based, because Anakin obviously shapes the whole prequels, but again, he and Sheev shape them with events. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a lazy way out of that or not, but I don't have any favorite characters until we get to the sequels.
Okay. And then what about character moments? Anything specific
Oh, sure.
jumps to mind?
Calling, I guess, back to Empire Strikes Back about how I think Vader's character actually develops, and where you see more of who he is as a character is when Luke is hanging off the weather vane or whatever that was on Bespin, because Vader's like, look, I am specifically not trying to kill you. I have been doing everything to test your limits and power and everything, but I am not killing you on purpose. Like, you have to understand this. And then Luke just, clips him in the arm, and Vader's like, oh, okay, I've had enough of this. Just ends it. But even still, he starts talking about, he's like, I don't want to fight you. I want to go and stop the Emperor. Like, let's you and me be like ruling the galaxy and stuff. So it shows you already like more of what the Sith believe, more of what Vader's where his attachments are, so that events in Jedi make a lot more sense. So, I think that would probably be, I think, a good character defining moment, even though it may not seem like, Luke losing his hand. That's just a, spoilers, that's just a side effect of that conversation, right? When he tells him, no, I'd rather die, But I think that's a really good moment. But the one that I always wanted when I heard about it for Han Solo to have, to Travis's point of character evolution and development, is for him to die in the bunker on Endor, because then his whole arc is totally complete, from being a totally selfish smuggler and worrying about his own interests. Money is all that you love, and that's what you'll get, all the way to dying for a cause that he didn't think that he believed in. And that was what I learned a couple years ago or whatever, that Harrison Ford really wanted for the character, both to stop playing it and then round out the story really well. And I was like, oh man, that it, from a storytelling perspective, in my opinion, makes perfect sense. So I think that those are probably some of the highlights that I think are really, really good, that go a lot deeper.
Okay. Yeah, I like that a lot. Me, and this is gonna be in line with what you were saying at the beginning. I have to fall back from Luke, from him being like such a floppy-haired, whiny little punk.
What's that do? Stop it. Yeah.
His voice was pitched up higher.
Right.
The way he walked was like floppy, and his hair just
Mm-hmm.
but those were all Mark Hamill's
the original
character
Jar Jar.
choices. He did that intentionally to show the character's growth versus the very still, calm, level-headed person
Mm-hmm.
that you see in Return of the Jedi. I just really enjoyed that. But as far as character moments, I have to give it up to Vader for randomly strangling people all the time, and
Just me at LPL.
It
those-
wasn't random.
You're right.
No, it definitely wasn't random. But each time, it's very like it's for a specific reason, and
Calculated.
Mm-hmm.
but it's like I will inform Lord Vader personally.
Yeah.
Apology
Apology accepted, Captain Nita.
As he falls away
Mm-hmm.
into death.
Yeah.
But that's one thing, when he chokes the guy over the video link
Okay.
in Empire Strikes Back. It took me a long time to really understand why he killed that guy,
Mm-hmm.
because I just wasn't paying attention. It's like he
When you're
brought
little,
them out
you're
of
like
hyperspace.
explosions and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, why'd he kill that guy? He just likes to kill. Okay, he's a villain. But he had a reason because he was frustrated with the way, he was just an idiot, basically. Uh, and Vader had expectations of them being competent, and in his opinion, he was incompetent by bringing them out of hyperspace way too late and basically ruining the surprise. He was like, "Well, I thought we should have a surprise attack on Hoth." He's like, "Well, you just totally blew our cover, and now I have to go in there swinging. That wasn't my plan." So
Yeah, one has to wonder if how many people has he killed from high command, and had he let them learn from their mistakes, would he been better off than having a fresh new person in every time a mistake?
yeah,
I don't know, but let's jump into actual like specific episodes, right? So
always deal in absolutes.
all right, so specifically A New Hope. We'll jump straight into that. And what you guys thought of it, general stuff. If anything that you would want to change from it, and what did you like? Austin, your thoughts?
I definitely think it's the weakest of the three, mostly because it's designed to be a self-contained movie, because that's how it was written to sell to theaters, so it had to be done that way. But then there's also the part about, I'm just going over this real quickly on purpose, is because otherwise it would just be hours. The other part being that George Lucas's wife made so many positive changes, like the communication between the X-Wings on the Death Star attack. Like, there's a lot of really important things that made the movie better, and a lot of just sort of flatter stuff that George had in that he thought would be good for like exposition, stuff like that. And while true, it slowed the movie down, which is unfortunate. But I think most of the stuff that I love in 4 is, of course, Obi-Wan. Who's the fool? Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him? Old man, I knew you were going to say that. So a lot of their quotes, a lot of how the characters interact is what I like the most, for sure. And then, of course, Luke has the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, and he just points it right in his eyes.
Yeah, he's an idiot.
Yeah, well, and that's what's cool. It's he's not throwing it around like it's, the first time he's ever seen something interesting, like in Jedi, when he matures, of course. But I think, I don't know if there's a whole lot that I could or would change, because, how they get to the Death Star, and specifically how Han Solo ends up helping them, in this whole thing, is a complete accident. He never intended to do that at all. That's
Han Solo.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And so that's, I think, I don't know. I don't know how I really change it, quite honestly, because a lot of it is such a good vehicle for the characters. I would have shown more Biggs, probably, because
his death meant nothing.
Right.
I hate to say it,
Yeah, instead of him on purpose falling back and protecting Luke and doing the stuff in the books. I think this.
I want Porkins, a Star Wars story.
I'm having a little trouble here. Family Guy did that too well for me to try and change.
You mean Pork Rinds, a Star Wars story?
Why would you call a larger dude Porkins? Why? That wasn't an accident,
It was body shaming in the 70s.
Yeah, seriously.
But you make a really good point. I'm actually going to remove that question of what would you change. I've kind of been using the same outline for, I did one for the prequels and one for the sequels, but this being the piece that everything is coming out of, there's not much that we can change without, disrupting everything else.
I mean, that's true, but I think it's an interesting conversation piece. It's interesting to what would you change about the original trilogy if there is anything you would change?
Mm-hmm.
What would it be? It's like a thought experiment. I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing you can really change is like have a more aggressive lightsaber battle, but
Right.
I don't know. That's about
Scene
it.
38, man.
Well, here's the thing about that too. Even though it's kind of off the cuff comment, um, I like the rationale when we get to the sequels that the lightsaber battles are less, um, you know, excellent and less incredible as the series goes on, because there's not nearly as much training, education, physical ability, especially between Vader and Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's old and Vader's like 90% machine. So like,
Yeah.
and not like Magna Guard machine where they can flip all over stuff. It's like refrigerator machine. So,
Yeah. It's
he,
like life support machine.
yeah, it's like he's got most of a Bacta droid attached to him. It's not really like, they're not in the position to be able to fight like how they did in 3. So I think it makes a lot of sense even there that how the lightsaber fights look are appropriate for the era, appropriate for.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not that I thought you thought differently, but that's just even more of a comment of like, I think it would be hard to change some stuff. But as far as I know that there's, obviously I think we all probably saved Boba Fett in 6, and I guess basically we do anyway with Mandalorian coming out and him, being in a part of it, possibly Tamara Morrison and everything playing him. But I think, there's really very little I'd change in 4, and probably over all of them for the most part. But there's something here that I'll just have to think about it. There's something out there, elusive.
Yeah. I'm on the same page. There's some cool stuff added. There's specifically a canon novel called From a Certain Point of View. I don't recommend you read it because it's largely terrible.
What about the Boba Fett part?
From a certain point of view.
Yeah. So from a certain point of view, it takes everything that happens during the entire movie, and it re-explains all of those parts, but it's from a different person's perspective. One of them is like the Dianoga is force sensitive and is learning about the force. It's like super. There's a bunch of really just weird stuff that happens, and you're like, but why? But it has some really cool force-based stuff. It has right before Luke shows up, Qui-Gon appears to Obi-Wan and is talking to him about him, being ready to train the boy and all this stuff. And it's from Qui-Gon's point of view, and he knows that Obi-Wan is going to die soon, right? Because essentially he's part of the cosmic force, where time doesn't mean anything, and they know everything and nothing at the same time. It's complicated. And some of those perspectives are just awesome. I wish we could somehow incorporate them a little bit more, but a lot of the Force lore wasn't really created and at that point, and it kind of rolled out slowly. Travis, how about you? New Hope
What was
thoughts?
the question again? New Hope thoughts. Okay, my thoughts on the New Hope, man.
But
Okay,
let's
I
be
watched.
quick though, because we got 2 more movies.
Okay, I watched it again on Monday night, and it's just, it was so cool, like seeing that beginning portion where it's in Tatooine, and after having seen The Mandalorian and like even the behind the scenes things, how they brought in the 501st
Mm-hmm.
and all those guys, and what it meant to them to be stormtroopers. I feel like I have like a new appreciation for just that process, and seeing the stormtroopers in Tatooine, like they look so good, and it's like this is 1976 that they're making this movie. It's just, I have so much respect for that, and real quick
There were
again,
no 3D printers at that point.
yeah. So I feel like A New Hope, it's actually is as as Austin said, that it's kind of like the least favorite of the three. Um,
At least for me.
it's the foundation. I think a lot of people feel the same way, and even I did for a certain amount of time. But it's a foundational movie. So much world building and groundwork is laid in that movie. Just the scene when they're in the Falcon on the way to Alderaan. Uh, Obi-Wan is explaining the Force. He's explaining the how to work a lightsaber to Luke, and uh, Han Solo is saying how he doesn't believe in that hocus pocus, which is later paid off in The Force Awakens, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same exact spot on the Falcon, he's like, it's true, all of it.
You're right.
And so I feel like after watching it again, it's like it's like the original Guardians of the Galaxy, and you have this team of like misfits and like random, like you said, they just randomly went on this adventure together, and it has all of the tropes of Star Wars in that one first movie. Like I have a bad feeling about this was said twice in that movie,
Mm-hmm.
once by Luke and then by Han.
This is where the fun begins.
Yeah, and
the original "Hello There."
Right.
That's right. and all the lore of the Jedi. I mean, obviously that's deepened later, but even Yavin 4, their base, it's not brand new. It's lived in. It's an old ancient temple, and you even see the very last. Yeah, there it is. The very last scene where they're getting the awards in the ceremony. It's like you see like these giant set pieces of like temple walls and pillars, and it's like I think the more you watch it, you see like this is such rich Star Wars. It is Star Wars, and it's the foundation for the whole shebang.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I can't really expand much beyond
also,
that. But
how much trivia are we doing during this? Not like questions, but like stuff that's cool, about like behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, as much as you want. You know, if there's specific stuff on this film or the next film, we'll do it while you're talking about the film, each specific one. You have a New Hope stuff?
So if my memory serves me correctly, I'm pretty sure that the scene in the ceremony scene that Travis was just referencing, that a good amount of those people are actually just like painted backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's super cool. Same thing. Well, same thing in Jedi with the landing sequence.
Yeah, it gets off the ship.
Yeah, landing sequence in the Emperor. Yeah. So
and that
really ingenious.
Yeah. They invented. That's the most beautiful part to me, because they invented. That's where ILM comes from. Is Star Wars. And
all the time.
Everything that they were doing. This was the first time it had ever been done, and they had to figure out exactly how to do it. I mean, when you hear the stories about how they made lightsaber sound, and it's like a, what is it, like a, one of them is like a radio sound and something else, and then they were swinging microphones above it in order to get the sounds.
Or how they made the blaster sounds. Ben Burt, there was like a cable, like all those like industrial cables that go like, and you hit it with a stick and it's like pow.
Oh really? That's cool. I didn't know that one.
Yeah,
which is funny because I remember being a little and hitting this thing like that, like on a bridge, like a really taut metal cable. Like that sounds awful lot like a blaster.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I think because I mean if you grew up in the 90s, you probably had the special edition of Star Wars on VHS. So the other one I liked was the TIE Fighter sound effects. It's an elephant screeching combined with a Jeep braking really hard. And then the both effects combined together. I was like, oh man, that's so cool. And to add to what you're saying earlier, Brandon, I think it was a broken CRT TV,
Yeah.
broken tube TV that
Yeah, that's
they
right.
got that from. I watched it on YouTube recently. And I was like, that is so cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, I think he brought a magnet close to it, and it started to like make this crazy sound.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
that's
just
so
curious
cool.
if we were doing trivia like that because I thought that all that kind of stuff is really cool.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, and
definitely.
another thing, the ceremony scene, uh, the coolest mustache in all of Star Wars, in the like right behind Princess Leia. Just look for it next time.
I'll make it pop up on screen. I apologize for this guy barking.
Oh,
She she's a wild child. She's my little Wookie. Uh, anyways, yeah, let's go ahead and move on to Empire, which is everyone's favorite. Now, usually, I'm not don't want to speak for you guys. It's certainly my favorite.
The majority.
Um, but for a very long time, Return of the Jedi was my favorite. So this one ended up coming out to
Same here.
edge it out. But yeah, what do you guys think? And also, I have one of the fan questions from Jay Skywalker 2000, and he asked, "Do you think Han should have died in Empire?" Right. That's why his character had kind of a cliffhanger. It's because Harrison Ford only signed up for 2 movies. They didn't know if he was coming back or not, so they had to write him to a place where either could be true.
interesting.
Travis?
Well, to answer that question quickly, off the bat, I don't think he should have died in that. I think they made a good call in keeping him in the Return of the Jedi. I know the famous story of Harrison Ford wanting his character to die off, but that wasn't because he hated the character or didn't like being in a Star Wars movie. It was because he felt like he wanted his character to have a heroic end,
Yeah.
and so that's out of a noble reason, which is why he
Yeah,
was.
he hated it later.
Yeah, he just hates people. He
Yeah,
hates questions.
yeah,
but he doesn't hate money.
you're right. Oh my
So
gosh, I think it's like tied between him and Samuel Jackson of like who's the richest still, right?
Yeah,
it went back and forth. I mean, I'm sure Samuel has now eked out a win
Because of
since
Nick
Marvel
Fury.
movies are still continuing. But
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah. And then to the question about Empire Strikes Back, uh, I have a deep love for a lot of the special effects in that movie. That it's like they went above and beyond anything ever attempted up to that point.
and I do have to say, as far as the special editions are concerned, I think the special editions add the most to Empire without
Yeah.
making it weird, right? We actually
Yeah.
get a lot more context of what Cloud City is and what it looks like and all that
With the windows open, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Cloud City looks so much more lifelike, and lived in and beautiful. What it was meant to be with the original Ralph McQuarrie paintings, and I finally thought of his name like 2 weeks ago. I forgot his name. But also with the fight, the Battle of Hoth, the original theatrical version, you see like when like Luke's in the cockpit of that was it A-wing or whatever, and it's like yes, snowspeeder, yeah. The cockpit is like translucent. You can actually see through it.
Yeah.
And so in the special edition, they used CGI to actually matte that better and line it up, and it really improved the scene. So it wasn't like there was a lot of practical reasons why the special edition was a good thing for that movie. But the original special effects of like I think it's my favorite shot in all of Star Wars is when you see the Tauntaun running across the snow from a distance,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's like it looks so believable and real, even though you know it's not real because it has that like movement of a claymation.
Mm.
But it's so intrinsically Star Wars, and it's something that Jon Favreau actually wanted to capture with the what do you call them,
I know what you're talking
the
about. On Ryloth, the little guys.
yeah, I'm blanking on the things that the Mandalorian rides.
Oh, the blurgs.
Blurgs.
The blurgs, yeah, blurgs, yeah. So they,
BF2 gun. That's all I remember it.
Aptly
yeah, and they,
named, especially if you play as an Imperial officer in Battlefront 2.
Oh.
The Blurg.
yeah. So it's that technique of claymation, stop motion, that they actually had to mimic and study the method in order to recreate it now in the Mandalorian. I thought that was really cool.
I have a quick question for Austin. What is the temperature inside of a Tauntaun?
I mean, it'll keep you warm enough until I get a shelter built.
Yeah.
No. I know this one. Hang on. Oh, it's a little lukewarm.
It's lukewarm. He gives me those painful puns all the time, so I have to give it back to him. But he doesn't mind them, so it's an exercise in humility.
Mad respect.
Thank you. Well, so
But-
Travis, I have a question for you then. How do you know that Brandon just already knows? So just using background, Travis, when I told Brandon this joke, he grabbed his head and sat on the sidewalk and just was sad. I don't want to say the word yelled, but just said like, oh, for like 20 seconds.
It's all right. I've told worse jokes. I mean, check the video from 2 weeks ago. You'll see.
I like it. So how do you know that Corellians are Canadian?
I don't know.
Well, of course, because of the asymmetry in their ship design.
I knew it was going there. I knew. I'm sorry, but that's
is there
probably the
anything
worst joke
lower
I've ever
than
heard.
mute?
Thank you. When you were like, no, I told some pretty bad ones, I was like, no, like, this is really bad.
But yeah, Austin, Empire. Give us your thoughts, and also specifically had another question from someone about
Let's do that first.
About Lando betraying his friends and what you thought about that. Now, of course,
you already know what I'm going to say. Look at the hand gesture.
But it's still something that pops up. It's still something that pops up. So
totally, it's a totally legitimate question. I guess to answer that first, I don't think that he did because he was put in an absolutely impossible situation of, oh, hey, the second most powerful person and the most feared bounty hunter of all time are now here right now holding a gun, lightsaber, and force to my head. Here are my options. Temporarily give them what they want so that not literally everyone dies or everyone dies. So, like, I mean, it's like you've got the local government and the second most powerful person in the galaxy at that time telling you, hey, I don't want to kill everybody. I just need this one little farm boy that I may or may not have relation to. I'm his dad. But glossing over how we know that. Like, so, I don't know. I think it was one of those impossible decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, you could tell that he hated doing it to the fact that he stood up to Vader
and yells at him a bunch. Yeah.
And which I don't know if you know this. You don't do that. That's not a thing most people do. Just saying.
For sure.
Yeah, but he's a fellow brother,
I do love that they would say that Billy D. Williams would lean into Carrie Fisher and then say the dirtiest thing that he could possibly think of right before they started rolling, and she would just have to cut it off. Like, it's terrible, but it's hilarious.
It was funny.
But
yeah,
yeah,
it is
awesome.
Carrie Fisher. I mean,
yeah.
You know.
If Carrie Fisher said it was dirty, then I mean,
You're right. That's really bad.
I suppose.
Yeah.
but yeah, Austin, thoughts on the movie in general?
Well, of course, love it. And it's funny. One of the pieces of trivia that I like the most to just prove that largely, and again, this is a easily contestable statement when it comes to the sequels, but like when it comes to the original trilogy, it's just true of the majority is always wrong. I mean, there's several TED Talks about just that mentality. It's really interesting. But Empire is still the lowest grossing Star Wars movie of all time by an unbelievable margin. So, but it's hailed as one of the best. But when it came out, people hated it. And that, yeah, just kind of, yeah, just more interesting trivia in my opinion about that. But overall, absolutely love it. So many things happen in it, and people say that. I think the one public, I guess, complaint that I have a opportunity to say, I disagree, is that the cave scene on Dagobah stops the movie, like stops the momentum of the movie.
It did when I was 6.
Right. Well, what's funny is even then, it's still like you still get a lightsaber battle of like, he blows his head, like he cuts his head off and stuff, and all it is philosophical, because when you see Vader's helmet pop completely off, I mean, we reenact Jango Fett. The when it
Anakin finally took a seat there.
And yeah, really, well, a hard seat. Took a nap. When you see the face portion, just blow off the mask, you understand, okay, cool. There's just a lot to contemplate in that scene. So it requires more thinking, which is why it potentially stops the movie a little bit more, because until then it was just lifting rocks and, like using the Force and everything. So I think it stops it because it requires more active thought. You have to understand, okay, by choosing to bring his lightsaber into the cave, Luke chose violence over diplomacy. By doing that, he invited a conflict. What was he going to do with that conflict? In that conflict, the Force told him, hey, you're starting to become like the worst person, one of the 2 worst people in the galaxy. If you continue, you are going to fall to the dark path. Like Yoda said, it's easy, but it's not super. So I think the cave scene is really valuable and extremely meaningful, and I don't think stops the movie at all, because then again, in Jedi, when Luke cuts off his arm, same thing. He looks at his hand. He's like, oh, crap, my hand's mechanical. So a lot of those reflective moments happen all in one scene, all at one time, all in one area. So I think that if I was going to pick out something that I think is an incorrect complaint, I think it would be that, because it's, number one, it's easy to say because Family Guy made the joke about it, right? But number 2, it just requires, it has an incredible amount of subtext. There's no dialogue in that entire part. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's one thing, but not to monopolize everything. And I'll think of more stuff, I'm sure. But yeah, honestly, I loved in Cloud City when Vader just goes and then just deflects and just absorbs, dissipates, whatever, all the bullets. And so, there's complaints.
He can do that?
Right.
I remember being a little kid, seeing that for the first time. The doors open, and even as a little kid, you're like, holy shit.
Yeah. Like, they're not allowed to do that, though. Like, he doesn't have a
We would be
shield.
Honored if you would join us.
That is, by the way, what my wedding invites are going to say.
I respectfully decline.
I would like to, Michael, how would you like to do me a favor? Well, I would like to use up my favor and decline. But that was awesome, because then because again, to what Travis was saying earlier, the special effects are so good. I don't know how to do that. Like,
yeah.
Of just, especially in the stinking 80s, early 80s, they have a guy standing there just exploding, just like stopping explosions off of his hand, and then with the same hand he just goes and then just pulls the gun out of Han Solo's hand. Yeah, just that whole scene was awesome.
Which
And
point moving something with the Force is the first time we've seen it. It was in this movie, right? That wasn't the thing. That was not in.
Actually, Obi-Wan Kenobi opens a door with his hands in A New Hope.
Oh yes, on the Death Star.
Yeah, on the Death Star.
Okay,
yeah.
I was like, I'm trying to picture like him opening like a manual door. Like, how did I miss that? No, you're right. But I mean, like actually, like pulling an object to you. We have,
Yeah.
in the cave, and then
Luke with the
and something we've always seen is each episode brings in a new Force ability.
Yeah.
Or a few. But yeah, I'm sure while Travis has some comments of his own on it, that I'll think of other ones. But I think those are the ones that stand out the most to me. Is like the special effects in that were awesome. I honestly really like the cave scene.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's the best thing in the whole movie, but it's really, really, really valuable. And it plays to a lot of the spirituality aspect, the good versus evil. A lot of what Star Wars is in that cave scene.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
cave scene is very important. It's almost
I'm glad
like
you
the
feel
crux.
the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the crux of the whole allegory.
And the fact that's how masterful this thing was made is because that scene had to happen before he finds out that Vader is his father, and like just the way that they tied everything together. And even still, we really get. I mean, the whole time on Dagobah is my favorite thing in the whole film, and we see how Yoda was right the whole time. Luke was impatient and just a little dick the whole time. You know, like even while training, he's whining. You know, goes into the cave. You won't need your weapon. Looks him in the face. Still brings him.
Yeah.
By
the way, if I may interrupt, I'm sorry. Even R2 is right, and what I mean by that is on Bespin, R2 bumps Luke, and he's like, "Dude, use your lightsaber." Like everyone is right except Luke, you know. And Luke's like, "Go away! Like I've got my gun," you know. So yeah, I just want to add to that of like even the droids are right over him.
But he's such an emotional and impetuous character.
I wonder where he gets it
and
from.
It's and you know there's nature versus nurture, right? So some of that was immaturity, but him just being emotional and flying off the handle is innate. That's part of who he is as a person. That's part of his personality. And so, you know, he didn't finish his training. He's like, I sense that they're in danger, and I'm going now. And Yoda's like, you're probably gonna die. And he's like, I don't care. It's like,
I don't think so.
And like legitimately, Yoda's like, well, there goes our last hope. Like he's dead now. At that point, Yoda's like, he's going to die for sure. You know, that was our last hope. But I mean,
and that's
there's
where
another.
The greatest acting, I think, in the entire trilogy is in Dagobah. When Yoda is talking to Luke in his hut, you just found out that Yoda's Yoda, you know, and he's like too young for the training or too old for the training and all that. And I think they talk about him having to face Vader, and Luke's like, I'm not afraid. And Yoda says, you will be.
That's one of the most terrifying scenes from my childhood is seeing, like, two things really jump out to me. One is Yoda saying, you will be. The other is Willy Wonka, where he's reciting the poem as the boat's going faster and faster. Both of those
never slowing, always flowing.
Same energy in those two scenes.
Never knowing where we're going.
Also, this is the first time that we saw Force ghosts and started to understand, you know, what they were. I heard people being upset and, you know, Rise of Skywalker, like, Force ghosts can't interact with the world, and you're like, so they just fall through the floor.
Like Obi-Wan sat down on stuff.
Yeah, Obi-Wan walks in. he brushes aside, leaves and stuff that are in his face, and he sits on a log and talks. Um, that's what informs what can and can't be done. Also, um, I know neither of you guys have read it, but Lost Stars is such a good freaking book. And this book
Yeah.
takes place in the background of the original trilogy. So one of the main characters in Lost Stars actually is there, and she goes aboard the Millennium Falcon to disable the hyperdrive when they're on Cloud City. Just
They told me
Really?
they fixed it.
just so cool.
So
And then one last thing is my favorite music of all of Star Wars is the Astro Belt scene, and it keeps going into the Imperial theme and then out of it into this like wondrous. I'm a musician myself, or was. I don't know. I don't do much anymore, but
I'm something of a scientist myself. That's a Spider-Man joke.
it never just that music.
I can hear it.
I see what you did. No, you can turn it off. I'll actually will play it in the background of this scene.
Okay. I just happen to have it on vinyl, like at the ready.
So something, by the way, since we're discussing trivia and different things, there's two fan theories that I like that I will go over quickly because you can go over them at length and we'll see what the group thinks. But the first one I love is that Ozzel was actually a rebel spy because he's so bad at his job that his incompetence bordered on treason.
Which I like. I do like that one.
If they didn't print a comic that detailed his incredible incompetence and total nepotism that he was shown, then that would actually be really true. But that's my favorite one, I think.
It would be slightly more settled than Hux going, "I'm the spy."
And you're right, for sure. Oh, God.
What?
And
I spy with my little eye.
Yeah. It was a coordinated attack. And the other one is that and this is a I think, I'm sure other people have thought this, but or read it somewhere, I can't remember, but no idea is original, that when Yoda is referring to, no, there is another, from the scene that you were talking about, Travis, that he's really referring to Anakin and not Leia, of like another chosen one to kill the Emperor and restore balance and stuff, thinking like, hey, you know what, I gave the kid a hard time, he's now one of the worst people ever, but even when he and I were interacting and in the Clone Wars and everything, he was overall good. He was just swayed by how he felt and everything. So that's what I like, because I think it speaks to the overall story. But in general, and I think when everyone sees Jedi, you're like, oh, okay, he's talking about Leia. But
and that's one of those. That's how it was written versus how it turned out.
Sure.
I agree with you 1,000% on that he was referring to Anakin because Yoda being so wise is like,
and
no, he's
to the whole
still
story. Mm-hmm.
He's so first of
I
all,
mean, if
the prophecy,
it meant Leia, she wouldn't have kissed him in that movie.
Right, yeah.
Well, so according to the prophecy never says that it's a Jedi that will bring balance to the Force, right? They just all assumed that was the case, and so using this logic, and Obi-Wan saw his friend fall, so of course he doesn't think that he would ever turn. I like to think Yoda is able to remove himself emotionally from the situation enough to be level-headed. But in the same book, from a certain point of view, they actually talk about it, and one of them is Yoda on Dagobah. And this is the very moment that Obi-Wan dies and starts to go into the Force. And he talks to Yoda at that point, and Yoda's like, he's like, Skywalker's is going to be, with the child of Skywalker is going to be coming to you soon, and he's like, awesome, I can't wait for her to get here. the whole time he was thinking Leia would be the chosen one because her personality is very strong-willed and just the exact opposite of Luke. Luke's personality mirrors his father's, which would seem problematic. Um,
Reckless.
and
How
so
would that be an issue?
you're reckless.
Yeah.
Just how he says it's beautiful. But
Reckless.
yeah. So that's just a few things. Also, I had another person ask a question. Um, if Vader never found out that Luke was his son prior to their duel, how different would that duel have been? It would have been the same. As a Sith, your goal is to become the top Sith. So anyone that is sufficiently strong enough to be a contender, we've seen it through every form of medium, right? So even if Luke wasn't his son, but was just a person who was that strong in the Force, yeah, Vader would try to get him to join as well.
Yeah,
We saw that a
I
lot,
agree.
Ventress and everything in Clone Wars,
Yeah,
and especially Episode 3, obviously. Even in 6, the Emperor's like, cool, kill him, but that's why I think that's the thing that I like the most. Probably the only thing really that I like out of the Vader 2017 comic is when Vader was just being Anakin in a suit of like, hey, if the Grand Inquisitor would have killed me, would he have taken my place? And the Emperor's like, obviously, idiot. Like, that's our way. Well, did you know I was gonna win? Obviously, So there's it. I like that it opens up. Yeah, I think Empire opens up really a lot of just how the Sith in general operate, and thought that was really valuable also. And
yeah.
I agree. That's the reason. That's the only reason Luke didn't die is because Vader was like, "Hey, there's not a whole lot of these guys left." So you know,
Yeah, yeah. Also, a Vader just he can't take on the Emperor himself. Like
right?
he can't withstand Force lightning. It's just you know
Yeah.
Or
after
water.
after being turned into a person McNugget, um, he's he's a little bit limited. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
why don't we go ahead and jump into Jedi?
all right. I just had one thing that I was going to tack onto that. Sorry, but Vader. It says in the opening crawl of The Empire Strikes Back that Vader's searching for Luke Skywalker after what he witnessed with his ability to blow up the Death Star, and his encounter with Obi-Wan Kenobi. So, you could argue that maybe he knew he was his son at that point or not, but
Definitely.
either way, I think it, like you said, if he wasn't his son, he still would have been pursuing him because of that power that he saw in him.
Yeah.
And then at the point of that final encounter and fight with Luke and Vader wasn't trying to kill him. As we discussed before, he was trying to pressure him. And as a Sith does, working in absolutes, giving him an ultimatum: you either die or you join me, one or the two. And he chose death. And that just speaks to the character of Luke, which
that
leads us into the Return of the Jedi.
That is a very important part. Is Luke jumped off? He didn't have a plan.
Right.
Luke was certain he was about to die. I'll never join you.
Yeah.
But just for a brief touch on that subject, yes, in the crawl it says he's searching for Luke Skywalker, and in the opening scene, when after they destroy the probot, the probe droid, and the pictures come back, Vader looks at it and he's like, "That's it. That's the rebel base, and Skywalker's with him. I'm sure of it."
All he saw is like the power generator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the 2015 Star Wars comic series, it actually explains that, where Vader had an official mission from Palpatine on Tatooine, but he shows up a day earlier. They're like, "You're here early," and he's like, "Yeah, no, my official meeting will be tomorrow. I'll be back for that. But I need to find out who this pilot was that destroyed the Death Star." He actually hires Boba Fett to track him down. Boba Fett goes and tracks down what information he can to come back to him, and it's like, I wasn't able to capture him. All I got was a name, Skywalker. And
There
then
you go. Yeah.
so that's how he finds out. But it's just an awesome scene in the
Yeah.
comic because Vader fractures all the glass around him because he knows at that point.
Yeah, just the name alone.
Yeah.